we are going to use and be putting on this frame, the 8 GPU Veta frame. So those are the 8 GPUs that we will be using. Okay, I'm gonna jump back in here now and we are going to get to our build. Okay, let's get our GPUs on. All right guys, so like I said, we are going to be using for the Win 3 edition graphics cards for 5 of these cards. Then for 2 of the cards, it's going to be the Asus TUF 3070s, and these are the overclocked edition. And then we have the NVIDIA 3070, I'm sorry, Founders Edition. Okay, so it's going to be a rig that's a little bit, you know, mixed up as far as brand goes, but they're all 3070, all RTX model. All right. Okay, so now we're gonna get to our GPUs and installing our GPUs. But first, I'm gonna show you guys how a GPU is actually installed on a riser, okay? So, out of the box bag here, which is anti-static bag, and then we will still peel the plastic off of these. They do have the plastic on. They're gonna come with a protective cover here, okay? That's to protect that. And then your riser is gonna plug in to the bottom of your GPU. And I'm not gonna do it yet because I wanna get the GPUs on there first. But the riser plugs in to the GPU like so, okay? I want to get the GPUs hung first and then I'm going to connect the risers. Some people do it the other way. I just find it's a little bit easier to actually get the GPU hung on there first and then connect the riser. Okay, so all right, I think in the order that I want these, I think I'm gonna do, because the For the Win 3 edition has the cool RGB, so I think I'm gonna do those 4 first. And then I'm going to do the Asus TUFs, and then I'm going to do the Founders Edition on the end. Now, the Founders Edition 3070 actually is only 1 8-pin. So, I'm actually not going to need a splitter for this last card. These 3070 For the Win 3 editions are dual 8-pins, okay? And if you can just see the difference in the size of the card as well. That's a considerable difference in the size of the card. These are massive cards, these For the Win 3 edition. And as you see, like I said, one's got 1 8-pin and one has one dual 8-pin. Okay, so. All right, get the plastic off of those. All right, and now our GPU frame actually came with screws that will mount for the GPUs to hang up there. Now the GPU is actually, there's another protective cover there, and that is actually going to hang, or I'm sorry, that is where we are going to mount the GPU, and then it will then rest on the second rail in front of the fan like so. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna get the plastic off of it first, then get the screws on. We'll get our GPUs installed. We're gonna go from 1 to 8 this way. We'll do the 5 For the Win 3s first. We'll do the 2 Asus TUF 3070s. Then we'll do the 3070 Founders Edition last. All right, guys, so we got all our GPUs laid out here. There's a lot of plastic to take off of the GPUs. One thing I do want to stress to you guys about these GPUs, and I'll show you each different one, is that the plastic protective coating that comes on the back of these GPUs, you want to make sure that you take that off, because if you don't, that's gonna not allow the heat to dissipate from your GPU and you're gonna burn your memory up. So make sure that you peel off all the protective plastic, these ones on the side as well. Okay, I'm gonna double check and make sure that I peeled off all of them. It does come with a lot of little plastic on all the GPUs, so you want to make sure that all your GPUs have all the protective plastic on it. Okay, so this is the ASUS TUF 3070, as you can see there. Okay, that's a pretty cool GPU actually. Nice, I like that. Okay, then we've got the For the Win 3 3070 edition. I like that too. It's actually a really thick GPU. It's a decent size and it's got some weight to it. Okay, then we've got the XC3 edition of the EVGA 3070. Okay, now if you compare, these are made by the same manufacturer, but as you can see, that 3070 For the Win 3 is a lot thicker than that 3070 XC3 edition. Okay, like you can actually just see the difference in the size of the GPU. They're both 3070s. Okay, so we're actually using a variation of 4 different 3070s. We've got the ASUS TUF 3070. Okay, and these are actually really nice. These cards are dope cards. See, they got the little logo on the fan. I really like that. And actually it's got some protective plastic on that as well. So we're gonna make sure that we get that off as well. We're gonna double check all the fans and make sure that we've even got the plastic off of the little center caps of the fans as well. Like I said, these GPUs come with a ton of plastic on them. So you wanna make sure, yep, there's one on the middle too. You wanna make sure, and you want to also be careful of your fan blade, but you want to make sure that you get all the plastic off the GPU so that the GPU can breathe. That is very important, that the GPU breathe. You want to make sure that your GPU can breathe. You don't want to have that plastic coating on it. Okay, now one thing I said was that for this build, I do a text file and I always list out the GPUs that I'm going to use, list out how many splitters that I'm going to need, list out the power supplies that I'm going to use, and I check all that to make sure that I have enough power to power my rig, and not also enough power to power the rig, but enough splitters and cables that I need, because I've been in that situation where I didn't have enough splitters and I was running a rig short of one card. And we all know a rig that is not running is a rig that is not making money. So if you got a down rig, then you're not making money, or a down card, you're not making money. That's no good. You always want to have your rig up and running if at all possible. Okay, now what I'm going back to my point about planning out my rig build, I did know just from previous experience and watching a couple other YouTube videos and other guys using this For the Win 3 3070, I knew that was a dual 8-pin. I was 100% sure of that. Okay, I did double check on the ASUS TUF and I made sure that those were dual 8-pin. I did see that those were dual 8-pins, but what I didn't do, and I automatically just assumed that the 3070 Founders Edition was a dual 8-pin, but it is not. It is a single 10-pin, and it does have an adapter here that makes it a single 8-pin. So in that case, we actually are not going to need one of our adapters that we use. You use this it's actually a 10-pin, and I've never seen that before. Again, this is my first time actually opening a Founders Edition card actually. So what it does is it has this little adapter that'll plop right into the 10-pin and it'll make it into an 8-pin. Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know that. This is my first time opening a Founders Edition card, and I, found that out. So, I mean, and actually it's a good thing because I was over planning, so I would have had an extra 8-pin left over, but you don't want to be on the other side of the fence where you're 1 pin short. So where you don't have an extra pin to power your last GPU and you know, you may be out of strands or out of splitters. I've been in that situation, and like I said, this is what my channel is for. If it can help somebody be more confident in building their rig or save themselves a little bit of trouble and headache by avoiding a mistake that I made, then I feel like I did a good job. Okay, so we are going to get these cards onto this rig and we are going to get these cards plugged in. Okay, so the orientation that I decided that I want to go is I want to go the For the Win 3 edition cards first. Okay, I want to do those 5. Then I want to do the 2 Asus TUF. I'm sorry, I want to do those 4. Okay, then I wanted to do the XC3 for the 5th. Then I want to do the 2 Asus TUFs for 6 and 7. And then I want to do the Founders Edition card last for number 8. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, like I said, your GPU is actually going to be mounted by these 2 little screws here into those 2 little brackets there on the top. So we're going to mount our first GPU. And you want to be careful with these GPUs. Sometimes you're going to have to maneuver it to actually get it into position, to actually get it on the frame into the right position. So you just have to turn it a little bit and then get it where you want it at, okay? All right guys, so that first GPU is in there. It is not tightened down yet. I'm gonna go ahead and secure the GPU, and then I'm gonna get all 6 of these GPUs onto the frame so you can see it, and I'm actually gonna flip it around so that it's easier to put the GPUs on there, and then we'll get the risers hooked up, and then we'll go to the next step. All right guys, now what I went ahead and did is I went ahead and flipped it around so you guys could see it better. And then if you guys want, if you can see right here, this GPU, you can see that it's actually screwed down into there, and we are gonna mount our GPUs all the way across 1 through 8 going down that way, guys. Okay, so I just wanted to show you guys that, so that you guys know how to mount your GPUs going across, and I wanted to give you guys a better view of the GPU, a better view of the rig facing forward, okay? All right guys, so let's get our GPUs on. If you haven't already done so, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you share the video with a friend. The sooner we get to 500 subscribers, the sooner we are going to do a giveaway for that 3060 Ti Founders Edition graphics card. All right guys, as you see, we have got all 8 of our cards attached to our rig, and now we have a complete mining rig. Okay, that wasn't that hard, guys. If this helps anybody and makes it a little less intimidating if they're attempting to build a mining rig for their very first time, I hope this video helped you out. That's what it was for, to help you avoid the mistakes that I have made in my journey of building mining rigs. So we are almost done. All we need to do is connect those risers, and then we need to do a little bit of BIOS modifications, and then we will be ready to fire the rig up. All right guys, so that's looking pretty good. So I mean, we started from scratch. We had just a frame. Now we have a complete mining rig all the way put together, okay? And it's looking really nice. So what I ended up doing, just because this was personal preference, for the orientation of the cards themselves, I went with the 3070 For the Win 3 editions first, because those were the thicker cards and those have the RGB on them. Then I went with the Asus Tough 3070s next because these were similar size to these. Then I went for the 3070 XC, and then I went for the Founders Edition. And I did that just as personal preference because they go kind of in order from the largest card down to the smallest. I did have the 3070 XC here, and then I had the two Asus Toughs here, and then I had the Founders Edition here. I just didn't like the way that looked. That's just personal preference for me. Like I said, it's just personal preference for me. I like the way it looks here, streamlined with the largest cards here, and then it kind of goes down to the smallest card. As I said, it doesn't really matter. That's all just personal preference. I like the way it looks. I hope you guys do too. We built it together, and that's what we're gonna do here. All right, guys, so all we gotta do last is we're gonna connect our risers, okay? Now, the risers are the last thing that we are going to have to connect here. And then once we get our risers connected, we're pretty much ready to fire the rig up, okay? Now, for the most part, as I said, I'll go over these components a little bit with you again. Just as an overview, we got our two power supplies, we have our motherboard, we have our CPU, processor, and fan, we have our sticks of RAM here, we have our PCIe adapter there, and we're gonna make sure all those are in. We are gonna double check everything, okay? Then we have our 8 cards. As I said, we've got 4 3070 for the Win 3 EVGAs. Then we've got 2 Asus Tough 3070s. Then we've got 1 3070 XC EVGA. And then we've got 1 NVIDIA Founders Edition 3070 graphics card. So this is an 8x3070 rig. We've basically built it all the way up from the ground all the way up. And now the last thing we've got to do is plug in our risers. Now, I like to have a little bit of organization when it comes to this riser and connecting the risers. So what I like to do is I like to start with the riser that is closest to the right or left, and then work my way back, okay? Now, and this is where your wire management will come into play at, where, you know, like, and you can always clean the wires up a little bit later, but I just want to show you on one of the cards how you're gonna pop in your riser. And I'm gonna have to reconnect that fan. I see that fan got unplugged there, so I have to reconnect the fan because we want all our fans plugged in. Okay, we reconnected our fan there. Okay, now what I've actually should have did is just brought the risers to the front because now they're actually tangled in the fan cords, which just gonna take a little bit of bringing them through. But I like the cords to be halfway like clean and nice cord management. So what I do is I pop the power cords up this way, and this is actually the one that we are not gonna need the extra 8 plug on, okay? So what you wanna do here is your riser is gonna have a little clip and latch there. That clip and latch goes back and forth, just like that, back and forth, okay? So what you wanna do is you're gonna wanna line that up right there with that. And these are screwed into here, so they are mounted in. But I just want to hold it there till you hear that snap, okay? Now, what you also want to do is you're going to want to make sure that this little tab back here on the graphics card locks into place. Now, with these particular risers, this actually locks in automatically like that. So I don't know if you heard that click or not, but it pops in automatically like that. Okay, so that's how you know that it is in. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your power cord, okay, and you are going to connect your power to your card like so. And now that one card is done, okay? So that's our first one. Now we wanna go with number 2, and it's gonna be the same process for each and every single one of these, okay? So it's just a matter of doing everything times 8 if you're running 8 cards, a matter of doing everything times 6 if you're running 6 cards, and it's a matter of doing everything times 4 if you happen to be running 4 cards, okay? So, and I'm gonna get these zip ties off of here as well. So that way they're just out of the way, and then we're just ready to plug those in, because those USBs are gonna go right into the motherboard there. Okay, now on here, again, simply just pop, and you heard that click. That's how you know it's in, okay? Then, remember I said make sure that you are powering your riser and your graphic card with the same with the same power supply, okay? Now, I like to come up in between my fans with this here, and then actually I'm gonna come up in between the card probably. Yeah, now I'll come up on the behind on the back end. Okay, so I'm gonna come back up here and I'm gonna just pop in my power cables to my GPU. All right, and then we're ready to go. And so we're gonna go on down the line. You gotta be careful for that. We're gonna go on down the line, all the way down to the 8th one, okay? And like I said, I like to have some type of cord management. So I try to get the GPUs that are on the same side as obviously the same side as the power supply, because the cords don't have to stretch as far. Which is just, you know, probably obvious thing to do, but no. All right, so I'm gonna get the rest of these on. All right. And then we got our power cables. Pull those up on the back side here, through here. And you can kind of run these cables any way you want to. There's no like right and wrong way to run these cables. I just like running mine a certain way, like closest to the card and closest on the power supply. So I guess what I'm saying is this power supply here, okay? This one on this side is gonna power these 4 cards here. And then these 4 cards are being powered by this power supply, okay? So, and then that way, the power is evenly distributed between the 2 power supplies, okay? So, one more here, all right. And this is our riser and our USB combo. Just get rid of those because we're probably going to use some traditional zip ties on those. I'm going to bring it through the bottom here around the fan. Going to bring the power up through there. Then we're going to go riser here. Pop the riser in. All right, guys, like we have actually almost built this rig totally, okay? There's not too many more steps that we have to go before we can actually fire this rig up, okay? This is actually the last step, is getting your cards and your risers in, plug your USBs in, and then you'll be ready to fire the rig up. But we are going to go over every single thing, and we are going to double check everything, because that's what I like to do. Because if you have something plugged in wrong, backwards, or the wrong way, you will see smoke. Okay, guys, don't say I did not warn you. I have plugged in a riser before backward, and I seen smoke. Didn't fry my board out, luckily, but it did fry the riser. So, and yeah, it did smoke. So that is a very true statement. When they say you will see smoke, you will see smoke. Okay. And you don't want that smoke, because that might burn your board out. And if you burn your board out, then you know everything you just did is worthless, because you're gonna need a new board and you can't run your rig. And remember what I said, if your rig's not running, you're not making money. Downtime, you're not making money on your rig when it's down. So you never want you to be the cause of your rig going down. Now, don't get it wrong, your rig will break down. You know, it's bound to happen. You're bound to have some troubleshooting issues. It's a whole nother video there, but for the most part, it should be smooth sailing. Okay, so then we'll go number 2 here, huh? All right, these are my next 3 back here. Okay, so take one under here. With these risers, you want to go from the front to the back. So the back part is the last part that clicks in. I've just found they go in better that way. You don't want to go the clip on the back part first and then push it in that way. Now, you also want to make sure all your power cables are snapped in correctly, because you don't want to have a loose cable. When it comes to when you boot up, you just don't want to have a loose cable. The GPU is going to have red lights on the back of the power ports. And if it ever has a power problem or a power issue, it's going to let you know which port on the GPU is having the power issue. So if you're not getting power to one of your GPUs, then your GPU is going to tell you which port, by the red light behind the port, which port is giving it a problem. Which port is the problem, or which port is not getting full power. All right, our last but not least. Okay. We got one more, and then we have our rig complete after we plug in our USBs. Now, it may take a little bit of wiggling to get your lines where you want them at, and to get your risers to the GPU. But as I mentioned, there's no right way and wrong way to run your cables. If you're comfortable with it the way it is and it runs, then it's serving its purpose. Okay? Like, you know, as long as it's running and the cables aren't touching anything or anything like that, then you'll be just fine. Bring that around there. Actually, okay, well, so that happened. And you want to check for loose cables. As I said, we're going to go through every single one and check it just to be sure, just to make sure we're not missing anything or anything didn't get plugged in correctly. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. All right, excuse me, guys. Let's get this zip tie off of here. 6, 7, and 8. All right, now I try to get my cards in the order of the PCIe slots that are on the motherboard. You can refer to your motherboard manual for that as to which slots go first. And the reason I like doing that is because when you're looking in Hive OS, you can actually see which card is which. I like basically seeing which card is which in sequential order, starting at 0 and going to GPU 7. Okay, but in order to do that, you're gonna have to plug them into the motherboard in that sequence. Okay, and it doesn't really matter. Again, this is little particular things that I prefer to do. These are things that I prefer to do. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna plug your USBs right into here. So remember, I told you we are gonna do 4 with the USB adapter here. I'm sorry, 4 in the PCIe adapter. I'm sorry. USB, the PCIe adapter. And I'll have a link to all the parts we used in this build in the description of the video. Okay. And some of this stuff may be sold out, not be in stock anymore. And there are other things that you can use, so it doesn't have to be these specific components. Again, just make sure you start with your motherboard compatibility with your processor and then go from there. All right, guys, we have just built a mining rig. Okay, now the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go through and we're gonna double check that every single thing is plugged in correctly and plugged in where we want it. And when I say everything, I mean every single connection. We are gonna go over and check and just make sure that everything is plugged in correctly. Sometimes your riser might not click in. Sometimes your USB might not be plugged in. And you just want to check all these things to make sure that they are all plugged in tight and correct. So that way when you boot your rig up, you don't have a problem. Okay? All right. Everything's looking good so far. Okay. Okay. Double check. Okay. We're running 4 out of the adapter, so we're not gonna need this one. Actually, what we'll do is, yep, we're gonna keep that one and we'll run 3 out of the adapter. How about that? Just because we've got that one plugged in already. Okay. And that's what our plan was anyway before, was to run 5 and 3 off the adapter. All right. We've just built a mining rig. Looks like everything is plugged in, ready to go. We've checked everything. I'm gonna spin it around, double check all the fans back here. And then we will get our SSD and then we will boot up the rig. All right, guys. And now for SSD cards, okay? Now, if you guys don't know what an SSD is, the SSD we're gonna use is a Kingston 120 gigabyte SSD. And that's what we're gonna use to store Hive OS on, okay? All right, and that's what's gonna operate and run the rig. So, quick overview, we got everything plugged in and ready to go. We're gonna get our power cables that'll go here. I'm gonna flip the rig around and I'm gonna check all the connections in the back of these power supplies as well. Make sure they're all snug and all plugged in. I'm gonna also check my fan connectors. I'm gonna check the fan controller as well. Got my SATA back here, and I'll show you guys where that is gonna go as well, because you're gonna have to hook your SATA up. But being that this is a new SSD, I'm gonna put Hive OS on this first. Now that's a whole different video as far, and it does correlate to making your mining rig run, but that's gonna be a secondary video as far as the software process of getting your mining rig running. I just wanted to give you guys a quick video of the fundamentals of actually building the mining rig, and I'm not gonna leave you hanging there. I am gonna get you guys a video, and we will proceed with another video, and for that part of the video we'll actually do the software aspect of it and actually flashing Hive OS onto the SSD and then actually getting the rig to run. But what we will do is I'm gonna spare you the part with the Hive OS. I'm gonna get it flashed on the SSD, and then we are going to boot the rig up so we can actually see if we did everything correctly and the rig fires up. So I'm gonna get Hive OS first installed and flashed on this SSD, and then I'm gonna get download our rig config file and all the configurations that we need. And then one other thing that we're gonna have to do beforehand is we are gonna have to go in and we are gonna have to modify the BIOS on this motherboard, and I'll show you guys how to do that as well when we go into the motherboard. Now the way we're gonna do that is we are going to use this Raspberry Pi touchscreen monitor. Okay, what that's going to do is that's going to give us a graphic display, and I'm going to get a keyboard as well, and that's going to give us a display to be able to get into our BIOS and change the settings on our motherboard. Other than that, you don't have to have a display on your rig. I choose to have one because I like to monitor my rigs. I just like to see what they're make sure they're operating correctly, make sure that they're getting accepted shares and things like that just on glance. So that's why I choose to use this. So as I said, this is going to be our monitor. We're going to plug this into our main GPU, and that'll give us a display. We're going to plug right on in to the HDMI on the motherboard, or you can plug into the HDMI on the graphics card. Okay, so you can do it either way, and then that'll get you a display and screen where you can get into your motherboard and change the BIOS on your motherboard, because there are some configurations that you do have to make in order to go ahead and get that motherboard configured on there. So what I usually do is I usually run my Raspberry Pi through my main HDMI display for my first GPU, whichever one's in the main PCIe slot. I usually plug that right into there. I get the power from the motherboard, and there you go. All right, guys, so we're gonna get some power to this rig. I'm gonna get HiveOS flashed on this SSD, and we're gonna get the screen hooked up, and then we'll get our rig fired up. All right, guys. All right, guys, so looks like we have our mining rig in place. All right, so we had got everything done. We got our rig in place. We got it on the rack with the other rigs, and now we are ready to add power to our rig. Now, before we do so, we have got to add an operating system onto the rig. And I thought that that would drag out this video a little bit too much, so I'm gonna do a follow-up video on how to download HiveOS and flash that onto an SSD, and then put your SSD on your rig. But for right now, I just went ahead and loaded HiveOS on the SSD. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna plug the SSD into the rig, and that's the operating system that's gonna run on the rig. Now, you can also run this with a USB as well. You can also run it on a USB and pop a USB stick in there. I prefer to run an SSD, and that's just personal preference for me. A lot of people say that the SSD is more stable, and I do believe so myself. So what you're gonna do is, in order to run your operating system onto your rig, you're gonna download HiveOS or Windows, if you're using Windows, onto your SSD. You're gonna flash that onto your SSD, and then in HiveOS you will configure your rig, and then you also want to get power to your SSD as well. Okay, so we're gonna add power to our SSD, and then we will be ready to fire our rig up. It might be a little tricky. I might need two hands to do that. Okay, so I'm gonna do that, and then we are gonna fire our rig up for the first time. As you guys can see, it looks really, really good. It really does. We've got 6 3070s. We've got 4 EVGA for the Win 3s. We've got 2 Asus TUF 3070s. We've got an EVGA 3070 XC. And then we've got a 3070 Founders Edition, and that one's in NVIDIA. So that's our rig, guys. We got the two 1200 watt EVGA P2 power supplies. We're using the Asus Z390P motherboard. We have two 16 gigabyte sticks of RAM. And I also like that RAM because it actually has an LED on top of it, adds a little flare to the motherboard. These motherboards also have LEDs underneath them. I really like that about those motherboards. So I'll link everything that we used in this build in the description. Some of the stuff may be in stock, some of the stuff may not. And, you know, there's always optionals. You know, you can always go with different GPUs. You can always go with a different motherboard. Just make sure you go ahead and check the chipset on your motherboard. Start from there, build your rig out from there. Okay, so I'm gonna get the screen hooked up, and then we are going to get the rig fired up for the first time, guys. All right, so if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the video with your friends. As soon as we make it to 500 subscribers, we will be doing a giveaway. All right, guys, there is our mining rig, looking beautiful down there. All our cards are installed. I went ahead and I hooked up our power supplies up to our PDU here at the top. And then I also went ahead and hooked up the Ethernet cable to our network switch up there. Now, I haven't plugged in the Ethernet cable because I do not want it to jump online. And I also did not plug in the SSD. Because I don't want it to boot HiveOS yet, because there are some BIOS modifications that we need to do on the motherboard first. Okay, BIOS mods are a whole different video. they're just basically modifications to the BIOS on the motherboard to change the configurations around. There are a couple of default configurations that we need to change around, but otherwise we are ready to power it up. So if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you leave a comment. That enters you into our drawing at 500 subscribers, and then we are going to do another drawing as well for 1,000 subscribers. All right guys, so we actually built a mining rig from start to finish here, and it's not that hard. I hope this would help anybody out if they're gonna go ahead and build a mining rig. If I can save them a little bit of trouble, any trouble at all, if they can avoid one of the mistakes that I made, you know, that's going to be great and help them. It's going to make their journey a lot easier building a mining rig. Like I said, I'm still learning here myself. One thing I do want to say, you gotta be careful for these motherboards. I have destroyed one of these motherboards before by pushing the CPU into the socket too hard, which damaged the pins inside of there. I should have showed you guys that more in detail, but what I'm talking about is the socket pins inside that motherboard socket. It should go and slide right in there. You shouldn't have to put any pressure on it, but I just dropped it down on there, and that was enough to actually bend the pins on it. So that cost me a motherboard, so that was a very costly mistake. Now I learned from my mistakes that cost me money, so I know not to make them again. So I just wanted to throw that out there for you guys. So when you are building your mining rig and you're, you know, getting your CPU on your motherboard, be extremely careful. Make sure you put that board on top of the cardboard. And then also one other thing, I said I don't want to use these smaller pegs under the motherboard for aesthetic reasons. However, the motherboard was way too close to the frame. You do not want that to touch the bottom of this frame. It could short circuit. So I changed it. I put the higher motherboard stands on there so it stood off of this frame a little bit more. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to fire it up, and then we're going to do the BIOS mod. But the moment of truth is going to be firing it up. We'll see if we got a problem, or we'll see if we're all good. We should be okay, but let's fire it up and take a look. All right, I double checked everything. I made sure that everything was plugged in. I triple checked everything, made sure everything was plugged in again and again and again. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna triple check again before we power it on, because I don't want to have a problem. Okay, guys, I just don't want to have a problem. So I just make sure that I check everything and make sure everything is nice and tight, and then we'll go ahead and give her a power on. Okay, all right, everything looks good. Our SATA is not in because we do not want to power our SSD yet. So let's go ahead, hit our power button, guys. All right, ready? 1, 2. All right, guys, looks like we got power. And it looks like we have power on all the cards as well. All the cards are, yeah, all the cards are powered on. We're doing all right. Okay. All right, guys, so I'm going to do that BIOS modification part that I was talking about, and I'm going to get right back to you guys. All right, guys, what I did was I went ahead and edited the BIOS, and I went ahead and made those BIOS modifications. Just wanted to give you guys a look, and I'm not sure how good you guys can see that, as to what the BIOS on the motherboard looks like. It's basically, as I mentioned, you're changing the configurations on your motherboard. So I have done all the necessary configurations and changes. I had to unplug the PCIe cables in order to do so. So I'm going to save changes and reboot, and then we will start mining. All right, guys, let's go ahead and boot it up. All right, now as I mentioned, I can turn on both power supplies here, and then once both power supplies are on, all right, once I hit the power button, it will activate both power supplies, because remember, we use that power supply connector. The power supply splitter, it splits the power supplies and brings them into the motherboard as one. You can get these in double and in triples. Also, with the splitters for the GPUs, you can get those in a variety of types. So they've got 6 to triple 8 pins. They've got 6 to dual 8 pins. They've got 8 to dual 6. They got 8 to triple 6. Whatever you need, you can pretty much find it online. All right, guys, let's give this rig a fire up. Here's our power button we installed, and oh, I hear something. I hear something. Just a wire. Okay, wire on a fan. You gotta watch that though. Okay. All right, guys, let's see what happens here. We should boot up and we should go into HiveOS, because I have inserted the SSD. There we go. All right, guys, and whoa, one thing I forgot was I did not know Ethernet cable. Okay, now we're connected to the internet. Okay, guys, that's what HiveOS looks like when it's booting up. And being that I already have a flight sheet in HiveOS, and that, like I said, that's the interface that actually you're mining to, because that's controlling your miner and the interface you're mining to. It's a whole nother video, so I'll probably get to that a little bit later. Probably be a week or two down the line. We'll probably do another rig build, and then we will go through the BIOS setup, and we will also go through installing HiveOS and flashing HiveOS on an SSD and getting that on there to run. So guys, as you can see, we just built a mining rig from start to finish, and yes, it is compiling the DAG files. Okay, it's doing exactly what it should be doing. That thing will be mining here in about 30 seconds, guys. So we did it. All right, if you haven't already done so, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'll continue to bring you guys more great content. I'm sorry the video was long. I just wanted to do it step by step, so that if somebody else was building a mining rig and it's their very first time, they're not too intimidated by it. Just think of it as a big computer without a case with a bunch of graphics cards, simply put. So yes, we are booting up into Hive right there, and we are going to start mining. All right. That's how we know the operating system booted up. All right, guys, so hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share the videos with your friends. We will continue to do more builds. As you can see, we've got a few rigs running. However, we are not done. We still got the biggest 3090 rig to do, and that one's gonna be a beast. Okay, guys, that's a 3090. That's as big as they come. That's the elusive one, the biggest one of them all, whatever you want to call it, the biggest, the baddest, the best, the 3090s. All right, guys, we're going to be doing a 3090 rig build next. As I said, we still got plenty more GPUs to install. We got plenty more equipment, guys. We're just getting started. We still got that Minebox 12 down there to get to, and we still are going to build more rigs. So let's see what we're pulling off the wall here for power. Okay, looks like we're at 2800 watts. Okay, 28. Okay, and that's because those GPUs haven't ramped all the way up yet. And I'm gonna set the overclocks as well in HiveOS. All right, guys, this is about as much as as far as it's gonna go for you guys. I mean, you guys pretty much got the basics of building a mining rig step by step, and what it takes to build one. As you guys can see, I'm building my collection up. I am getting more. In one of our next videos, after the next build, we will be discussing profits. Okay, guys, what we are making off of these machines. Okay, I can tell you guys just roughly the payouts for the 3060 Ti rig and the 3070 rig combined are about $300 to $400 every day. I'm sorry, every 3 days. I am so sorry. Which comes out to about on average like $100 a day so far. But that was without our 8x3070 rig running, and we do have another 3090 rig to add to it. As you can see, we are pulling about 11 amps on bank 1, 12 amps on bank 2. Okay. 1 amp on bank 1, 12 on bank 2. Nope. Yep, there we go. Alright guys. J-Minerrr here. If you guys haven't already done so, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I will continue to bring you guys more content.